Hello and welcome to the... Theoretically, these comment response videos are supposed to be roughly 20 minutes. We'll see. We'll see how I do. There's a fair number of comments. This is going to sound terrible. Name in Chinese... I cannot pronounce. Could it have been political reasons that led to conversion rather than construction, like Congress not wanting to pay for many new big ships, given that they were building Long Beach and churning out the LGs at the time? Then maybe the US Navy could just solve converting existing ships as a safer option to circumvent opposition, or perhaps as a spare. But I'm still trying to browse Congress committee hearings to find more info on this. Natty Boop responded, "If I know anything about my own Congress, and I really don't, we have to get them to sign off on new cruisers while they're throwing the biggest temper tantrums. The last cruisers, Toyoko, started as DGGs, and Zumwalts have been renamed DGGs the whole time, somehow." Yeah, pretty much, Congress are an interesting organization, politically, and especially from defense procurement perspectives. But they do try. They are very trying sometimes. And in this scenario, I think it was more a case of everyone had just built a massive fleet for World War II, and they didn't understand why they had to build new ones. They just didn't. And you're going to hear me typing again, because I'm just making sure the hider video saves properly. I don't know. It's just terrible. So many videos going on at the same time. I should have paused this one, but no. Bill Galactica, shamelessly using my Amazon Christmas vouchers to shamelessly buy books, including yours, Dr. C. Thank you, Bill. Jan, as a kid, I remember going with my father, who worked at the Boston Naval Shipyard in 59-60, and seeing Albany being built. It was impressive to a 10-year-old. It's very impressive. It's also... Well, there's a large chunk of me sitting there going, that is a lot of reworking of that hull. And Matthew Malachi, honestly, that superstructure would look better on Alaska hull, or as part of a oil refinery from Naval. But seriously, an Alaska would have been, to my mind, a far better conversion project. And I'm always surprised the US Navy didn't manage to get the Alaskas converted, because if they had, they'd have started a precedence of having some mega vessels on their in service, and the Alaskas would have been brilliant. You could have put in command facilities, the missiles, everything in one hull. It would have been great, the great thing. And still left some guns, or some firepower, so you could have still retained them in service. Kabakurabu, hello. Always had this design. One of my favourite model kits. I built 3 of them as a kit, plus a kit bashed 4th missile conversion of an hour class back then when I was a teenager. The 80s. Fun times. For some reason, Chicago's my favourite ship at the class. No good reason for it that I can recall, though it may have been something to do with her Red Crown work of Vietnam. Happy Christmas, Dr. Clarke, to you and yours, especially your furry research assistants who shared you with us. They do, trust me. If they object to sharing me on occasions. They're fun, but they do have objections to it, especially around certain times, walkies, and times when they are supposed to be able to get food from my plate. Because they have this perennial view that at some point, I am going to be emotionally weak enough, I'm actually going to give them food from my plate. It's never happened so far, but the rest of the family do support them so they live in hope that I might also weaken my resolve. But as I've always explained to them, my hunger outweighs your resolve. Kilgara, FYI, 5-inch guns are open turrets abreast the mainmast back. That's where I thought they were. I couldn't make them out of any picture. Thank you. Martin Moment. They are a bit hard to spot though. I was supposed to be looking for something like Long Beach mounts. Turns out the Mark 24 is an open mount. Which of those beam mounts have them in an open configuration? All the other uses, pre-war destroyers, look like they have added a gun house. Yeah. There are a lot of fun conversions going on. This one, you notice this one does have actual structures. Tommaso Balsioni. It honestly took me a few minutes to find a decent answer for the conversion question. They are actually not that many if you think about it, not looking at post-World War II. That's not really my forte. Given many are discounted as regunning and modernisation, actual conversions for roles different from the original one. Furious in her first stage is always a good one and a favourite of mine. It looks absolutely hideous with a single 18-inch gun, but I adore it. For all her clumsiness, the courageous Hal has some beautiful lines. On the other one, of the ones never carried out, there were so many, but to me, the USS Lafayette, ex-Normandy, as a carrier strikes a chord with me. The hull, to be exact, well, it looks just too tall, too disproportionate, to be taken seriously, going for a look by look alone. Would have made for a very big carrier for sure, though. Happy holidays, Ox. Thank you. Jack Ray. Did the superstructure height cause instability? I see the reasoning behind the Mac radar mast and the exhaust stacks design. Why didn't they make the superstructure broader and shorter? Other ships built around that time with similar roles had lower superstructures. I honestly have no idea. It does cause issues in high winds. It doesn't seem to cause too much issues in stability normally, because I think it's made of as lightly and as lightly as can possibly be made. But that doesn't make it necessarily a good thing to be in. And Mike Cabot, Albany class was definitely the most radical rebuild of all the US cruiser conversions. Oh yes. Send Penguins. One of the friends of my family had served on the Albany post-conversion. He was aboard for the famous Shoot-X photo that was supposed to be 4 missiles launched simultaneously. I always thought that photo was more accurate a representation of early naval missiles than the USN really would have liked. He also had been personally bitter that the city of Albany and the city of New York couldn't get a plan that would have let them keep the ship in Hudson. I do wish I'd had a chance to see one of the tall ladies in person. That would have been nice, and frankly, yes. I was having conversations with him, and he said, you have to remember, the United States isn't one country, it's 50 countries working together. And that does, to me, explain quite a lot, but it also makes it almost more disappointing that naval history and naval heritage suffers so much, because you'd expect at least one country, one of the out of 50 to be obsessed with Navy stuff and go, we'll maintain that, even if, no one else wants it. Even if it's not really directly related to them, they just maintain it to have the largest, biggest naval park of anyone. But, life happens. Match notes. For those wondering about the top weight on massive superstructure and max combined mast and smokestack, this was at a time when they thought that superstructure and other topside fittings made out of aluminium were an excellent idea due to weight savings and other issues. Then came the US Belknap collision and the fire in 1975 with various aluminium bits. I know Americans call it aluminum, but it's aluminium. Bits of the ship literally melting away from underneath the crew. And they decided that structural steel was always a pretty good idea after all. Yeah. No, I see that you're making up words. If you're prepared to make up words, what else are you prepared to make up? Making up words? If you're talking about conversioning, which is the only one I can think of that a really weird induced me anyway, but I cannot lay claim to it's great to use it sometimes to describe how conversion and conversion could get out of hand. His favourite to describe were the endless ships. I doubt he came up with it. It could be like reconnaissance, but reconnaissance armies, and so that disappeared in kind of strategical. Yes, conversion is I've made up. I suspect to sound academic. There was a perfectly good used already existing. Lady. I will have explained the story. Perhaps I'll use it in a journal article and submit that with definition to the OED. Dictionary can always do with more words. There is a perfectly good one in existence already. Don't you know it? It's the same root as the nonsense you made up, converting, for Christ's sake. And you can call yourself a doctor too. Okay. Well, that's my response was. You seem very stressed about all this for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I will say one of the first things I learned on my path to get my PhD was that language changes, even the English language, and it often has multiple words which sound similar and mean similar but slightly different things. Especially as you go back in time. My dad was a naval architect and apprentice shipwright who did his qualifications in the 1950s, studying on people who started at the Camel Laird's in the 1900s and 1910s, who themselves are probably trained by people who started their work in the 1880s. You'd be amazed at some of the variations of language that can lead to, even in official government documents stored in national archives. Hope it helps and that you're having a Merry Christmas and we'll have a great New Year. Martin Boland. I will die on the hill that says murderized is a perfectly good Lancastrian word. Yeah, coming from a father who was raised in the Liverpool area, trust me, the amount of phrases I have picked up from that one is fun. And of course, there's always the Scottish ones where basically you nish. And Surada, the Clarke, you've just encountered the dreaded mansplain, Dr. Clarke. No doubt he took some time off from harassing women to pay you a visit. I'm not sure who he did, but in the nicest way, he didn't need to come and be that upset. Conversioning is a word I freely claim is not in the Oxford English Dictionary, but it's a word I've grown up with in use because of my father. There are lots of phrases, if we all think about this, probably lots of phrases you use in a day which may or may not turn up in a dictionary. Because they're not part of the official language, but they are part of the lexicon. And yeah. By the way, I am writing that journal article to submit it, because if you have it published in just one journal article, and you get someone else to write another journal article with it, and I've got enough colleagues who will quite happily use the word in journal articles, you can get it into the Oxford English Dictionary. So welcome to conversioning. It will be coming to Scrabble boards soon near you, as soon as we've managed to publish 3 journal articles, which at this rate will be about 15 years. Your Spunk. Had to look up US's right. The aviation enthusiast and me really wish I hadn't. Still, there is plenty of space for men and equipment and supplies to stay out for a long time. But it's just silly. On a small note, the slide with Chicago stripped in Didoc says Chicago. Doesn't seem fair to her. Oops, didn't notice that one when I went through. Wonder if I used the wrong PowerPoint draft. Yeah, I noticed it when I went through and I didn't change it for this one either, because I just thought I'm just going to leave it as I'm going to say thank you for spotting it and sorry. Sorry, Chicago. Hugh Fisher, the photo around 1100 hours, 11 minutes mark, really emphasises just how high the new superstructure is. Good lord. What happened to these ships when the wind was on the beam? Did they have a deeper keel added or stabilizers? You wish. Yeah, Ken Brady, Chicago. I know. I do know. I don't know how it changed. Right, we have a nice long discussion going on between Christina Rodriguez and Turning 3434 and Chinese characters I can't pronounce. Okay, so Christina, is it me or why didn't they have a look at how the 7 Provincian class was rebuilt? As that ship was redesigned and rebuilt numerous times in the course of her history, and had her major conversions to a guided missile carrier in 1962-64, just on 18 months to the conversion. It is incredible that the Americans overcomplicated the process, and what I can understand is the 7 Provincian did its conversion and had sea trials in the United States in 1964, when the Albany class was still being built. Turning 3434, there are some huge differences between the D-7P and Albany. The 7 Provincian had 2 Rim 2 Terrier launchers replacing X and Y turrets. The front half and superstructure remained relatively unchanged, even the targeting radars were all installed aft. While the 7 Provincian has a noticeably higher superstructure with a MAC, those features have been incorporated in the all-gun design, likely to improve AA coverage in the early jet age. Albany was fitted with 2 Rim 8 Talos launchers front and back and 2 Rim 24 TARDAs on both sides of the British superstructure. The combination of targeting radars up front and TARDAs at the side are the main reason for the ridiculous superstructure. For comparison, Rim 2 Terrier, 1400 kg launch mass, rocket plus booster, 99 kg warhead, 32 km range. Rim 8 Talos, 35 kg launch mass, rocket plus booster, 211 kg warhead, 92 km range. Rim 24 Tata, 590 kg rocket, 59 kg warhead, 16 km range. Rim 24A. D7P and the 7 Provincian conversion is more akin to a Boston class conversion of Baltimore refitted between 52 and 56, with aft tunnels replaced by slightly obsolete Terriers. Albany had all the latest and greatest from the very start. The 7 Provincian was likely a bit of goodwill for the Dutch early willingness to run a relatively large military, especially navy, during the early days of NATO, while at the same time being forcing them to decolonize Indonesia and New Guinea. Christina Rodriguez. It's about time the conversation about adaptability the conversion adaptability of the type of weapons are not really a topic, as you need radars and places to launch your missiles from. Here is one great example. You have a ship class that can be redesigned, upgraded with new types of arms sensors. They could have done a complete conversion of the 7 Prevention class, dropping in extra missiles and batteries and radars. In fact, that this class was still in service until 2017 tells you how adaptable these conversions were. 7 Prevention herself rebuilt in the 70s to helicopter carrier, and both ships in Peru and Navy in service got an extensive refit in radars and capability, using the 1980s equipment built for the Dutch L-class and S-class frigates, and German Bremen class. The relatively large navy was planned according to what was needed, based on pre-war estimates. 3 large surface ships, 2 modern cruisers, 1 carrier. Actually, 3 carriers planned, large destroyers, fleet frigates, plus a host of replacements of run-down ships of World War II and losses suffered in World War II. Change characters. Albany conversion started in the late 50s. The works are mostly done by the time the 7 has her own rebuild. Christian Rodriguez. The 7 Prevention only took 18 months to rebuild, including sea trials, only taking 96 to 64. That was quicker than the massive rebuild of the Albany. This included fixing some of the original construction issues. Turning 3434. Sure, but based on a 10-year-old previously explored and similar conversion with last generation of weapons, I'm not surprised they've shaved another 6 months compared to the Boston conversion, especially when you can use a system that is already fully in operation. USN was not interested in another RIM 2 conversion, they wanted the next generation. So I don't understand why you insisted that the 7 Prevention is comparable with Albany conversion. I'd say it's probably the experience. And it's basically, I will say this, there wasn't enough sharing of information between the various navies. There needed to be more sharing of information of the nascent NATO navies on the conversion processes they're doing, because that would have saved a lot of money in all of them. In all of them they could have saved money if they'd done that. And time. In order to really understand why Albany took 10 years, we need to dive into how budget constraints and technology development had an impact on conversion speed to any sensible judgment. And even with all this, US Albany was able to serve longer than USN, while the D7 Prevention was decommissioned early and sold with the Terrier system. And regarding NATO commitment, the Dutch were running quite the air force, a comparatively huge army, and a fleet with worth of 2 NATO squadrons. It doesn't matter if those are pre-war estimates, we built them and we ran them. The Royal Navy didn't follow up on their pre-war and war estimates, even while the Dutch were in considerable worse shape after the war, and already in the new decolonisation war in 1946. I think the fact that the 12,000 tons the 7 Prevention class got replaced by 4,300 ton Trump class frigates tells you all you need to know about the Dutch Navy was more keen on running smaller high-tech units instead of large units. I'd love to know more about the politics behind the RIM 2 conversion, because I feel the lasting aspects are its impact on investments in Holland, Signal and Fails instead of the unit itself. The Dutch didn't buy a Terrier system, the USN gave it to them, and likely for more reasons than the capabilities of a single Terrier unit in North Atlantic. Although, also, there was also the Giuseppe Garibaldi rebuild in 57-61, and after 64, the new Andrea Doria helicopter cruisers, but the 7 Prevention were considerable badly suited as flagships. This is now from the Chinese characters. The point is, Christian Rodriguez, by the time that quick rebuild started, the works on these ships were well underway for years already. Albany herself was complete and ongoing sea trials by the time the 7 Prevention went into dry dock. Hence, it's chronologically impossible for them to have a look at how the 7 Prevention cruiser was rebuilt, because there was literally nothing to do on the 7 Prevention to look at during the late 50s when they started the conversion process. It's all an interesting history. And again, I will state this. I have the strong view that there should have been a lot more discussion between the NATO navies about what they were doing and how they were doing it. Because I think that would have saved a lot of cost. And a lot of issues. It really would have done. John Shepard. Said to be the ugliest ship in the US Navy. Chicago got shot down at least 1 MiG with a Talos and erased North Vietnamese radar signals with Talos arm. That's cool. Nathan Oaken, you really have to give a detailed talk about the various missile systems installed in the US Navy ships after World War II. They are very different from each other and all have various upgrades that drastically changed how they worked and how effective they were against various assigned targets. This is a much more complicated than any gun warship as to the effectiveness and ability to function in service. I realise that this is rather technical, but if you do not understand what was going on, the actual usefulness of these ships, or lack thereof, can be even vaguely understood. Warships are not voodoo dolls. Missiles are going to be the focus of 7th of November, 2023. Hello, Nathan, again. I have got to respond to your email. But I'll probably, I hopefully will have done a long time before this video comes out. But I'll probably add some more about missiles as I go, like I did with the Soviet systems. But I do have to be careful, because I am always of the scenario that, especially dealing with stuff probably back as far as the 1970s, sometimes even 1960s, I keep to what I call Wikipedia level information in terms of the details I give of them. The reason I say Wikipedia is because of this. I'm very lucky, my friends. I've worked with a lot of people from a lot of different navies. I have no desire to get them in trouble. So as long as I can say, well, I'm definitely not disclosed anything that's not public knowledge, because you can see it on Wikipedia, they're all fine. So, yeah. That's my policy, anyway. However, within that criterion, I think I can give you an idea, an overview. And I have an advantage in giving it over someone who has more of a technical basis, in that I am a historian. So I can present it without having necessarily the same draw to get into the finite technical details and possibly get those friends in trouble. So that is what's coming. But it's coming. There is a reason I scheduled it for November. Because I knew what I was doing in July. I knew what was going on in June, hopefully. I was going to Australia, and I knew I have a family trip in September for my mum's birthday and all those things. So I just thought, right then, I'll put it nicely towards the end of the year when I'll be free and able to do it. Carl, I don't know what is whether it counts conversion, but late 1896 SMS Budapest coastal batteries had a A turret to 28 centimeters. That's 9.4 inch. Roughly, replaced by a 15-inch siege howitzer for bombardment duties in late World War I. Firing a broadside, she had a 30-degree roll, so the experiment was abandoned. Probably some torpedo bulges would have been beneficial. A lot of torpedo bulges would have been beneficial. Ken Brady. Tool superstructure. I always wanted tools in Adelaide. No, very fit people. Kurt. Slide says Chicago. Sorry. Chicago is a bottom class, not an Oregon City class. Count the number of stacks. The Cleveland class, bottom class, and the size. The Cleveland class, bottom class, and various post-World War II cruisers getting converted in detail. I think things skipped from Wichita to missile cruisers. For the first two, one, others have pointed this, and yes, it's somehow slipped from Emerson myself. Two, the first two are Oregon City class vessels. I didn't cover much on Chicago. She was prior, and honestly, as far as I was concerned, is more interested in the missile configuration. She will be covered in the US treaty cruisers and retrospect video. There's more of that. And Grand Pratt, took me a bit to find the 5-inch guns. They are open single mounts at the base of the aft mast. Craig Patel, I think it's more like a platform in the aft Mac. Just below are the Mark 32 triple torpedo tubes. It's hunting for the guns in the Albany class causes a lot of fun for everyone, not just me. I'm glad about that in a way. John Goldman, my eyes thank the fluffy research assistant for truncating the display of these cruisers. This is a very compassionate poodle. I suspect the hull was not that impressed either, given how elegant the original superstructure was. It was fun. Benjamin, very much enjoyed this video. The 20-minute length is ideal for watching, as videos stretched beyond an hour, it's hard for me to find time to watch, or finishing to watching them. I think the actual comment response video is no longer than the video was. This is a video that I can watch during my lunch break or after dinner. I have an uncle who I think served on one of these cruisers in the 60s. He was part of the blockade of Cuba during the missile crisis. Heavy cruiser hulls do work well for these conversions. The uncompleted Alaska-class USS Hawaii would have been an amazing missile conversion, although I would be in favour of a more partial conversion to guns forward, missiles aft. Hawaii would have just been... that would have been a rocking ship. It would have been. It's true that the reconstruction reminds me of my house. Is it possible that the 5-year conversion of Chicago was related to them identifying the issues that sent Albany back for an extra 20 months of refits? If they avoided that refit phase on Chicago, you could almost say she saved time there. Roger Sangaral. I met a Filipino cook that was on Chicago during the Vietnam War. He said they would get fire order, go near the coast, shoot and move. Strachan's laptop. Hello. Great content, Dr. Clarke. Could you do one on the Invincible class carriers and the difference between them and the new QE ones, including the Harrier versus F-35, Merlin versus Sea King? No question, Doctor. Why are the Queen Elizabeth carriers so underarmed defensively, only 3 phalanx? 5 would have been even better, with a couple of 30mm cannon just for a good measure. Okay, so yes, I will do a video at some point, but in answer to the question of why they're supposed to have 4, it's the trouble is, where are you going to stick the 5th? This is going to sound strange. Is it going to fire across the deck? Is it going to fire across the flight deck? You don't want that. You don't want to put frag on the flight deck, and that's one of the things. If they've been slightly bigger, and I've discussed this before, then there is spaces that you could have made for, especially things like Sea Scepter, which is a cold launch missile system. So the frag on the deck would be kept at a minimum because of the way a cold launch happens versus a hot launch of a missile. But the thing is, as I've said before when talking about carriers, etc., the British doctrine and pretty much everyone's doctrine for carriers is they're supposed to have things with them. They are supposed to be part of a battle group. A carrier provides the outer air defense and this long-range strike capability of a battle group, and also its sort of information warfare awareness. It's not all the layers of the air defense, though. That's why you have Type 45 sort of area air defense destroyers. That's why you have Type 23, soon to be Type 26 anti-submarine warfare frigates. And that's why you have a Type 31 flak frigate. And let's be honest, the flak frigate is what's going to be right next to the carrier, with its guns going, I will move into the fret cone, and I will provide fire in the direction of fret cone, but if necessary, there's also the fact that I will turn on my jammers and make myself the biggest target here. And that's not a part which anyone really wants to discuss. No one really wants to discuss that, but let's be honest, that's part of that flak frigate's protection of carrier's job. Is that at some point, they might have to do that. And before people think this is brutal or new or something, it's not. HMS Nubian lost her bow in World War... not her bow, her stern in World War II during the operations of Crete, doing that for the carrier. You protect the carrier. Because as long as you have the carrier umbrella, then you can be recovered, then you can be protected in yourself and recover that carrier working. It's the same policy escorts have been carrying out with capital ships for their entire history. I did a video which will have come out in this on the glorious 1st of June. Why are the third rates, why are the frigates rushing in to protect the pull the third rates and the first rates out of action when they get damaged? Why are the third rates rushing towards HMS Queen Charlotte when she's alone fighting the French? Because you protect your flagship, you protect your capital ships. Because they matter. Because the people aboard them matter. They're making the decisions which are necessary for the whole wider campaign, and you need to make sure they're okay. I think, as I put it, Rear Admiral Palsy had a choice. Assist Queen Charlotte, and hopefully keep Lord Howe alive, or go back to the United Kingdom and explain how he let Lord Howe die alone. No one wants to do that. The Rear Admiral made his choice. The choice was made for him from the get-go. He took his ship in, and he took it in hard. Old Richard. I served on the Chicago in the 1970s. She was a magnificent ship in every way. Glad to hear it. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. This is now half an hour long, so it's well longer than the actual video was. But I will keep aiming for 20 minutes for videos and keep probably failing spectacularly, but I keep trying. Thank you very much and take care. And thank you again for your support. Australia, all these things would not be possible without it. Take care.